What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts, on the side, joined as always for the first time in quite some time,
as always,
say his name and he may appear. It took a couple episodes, but he's finally here. I believe in Tad Spencer. And so, yeah, he's finally back on the podcast here after a couple episodes. Seems like the back, I think, is in better spot now, but I'll let you sort of address that, obviously, how things have been going.
Yeah, no, doing better, dealing with some back issues, some personal issues. So thank you for carrying the show. But I'm back for now. We'll see. But it's good to be back, buddy. I missed you.
Yeah, no, I think he came back at the right time as well. I mean, we were able to sort of close out the coaching series, that we had before. So, I mean, in case you missed any of those episodes, go back and check that out. But we're going into our actually position rankings. And of course, with all of our episodes that we're going to be covering with all the fantasy positions that we're discussing, we will have coordinated graphics as well. So, I mean, guys, make sure we're going to promote it at the end of the episode too, but make sure you're following us on our social media handles because that's where you're going to get all of our position rankings, both mine as well as Tad's, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, defense, and kicker as well. So, I mean, we got you covered on all fronts there to cover you for all your fantasy leagues, which should be happening within the next couple of weeks before the season starts in a couple of weeks, Tad. It's almost here. It's crazy.
It's insane. It's actually further away than I thought because I was listening to the radio today and they're like, so 3 weeks from, this weekend, we're on the NFL kickoff. I was like, 3 weeks still? Like, damn it.
Yeah, but Dad is a college football fan 2 weeks until college football. So, I mean, it's like you got both happening. You got both happening at the same time here. So, exciting times for sure. But yeah, as discussed, we want to dive into position rankings now. We're not going to dive too much into our rankings specifically. That's why it's critical for you guys to follow us on our social media handles. That is where you can see our 1 through 12 or in some positions 1 through 24 for some of these positions to really go into where we rank guys. We're just going to give you sort of a overall look at the positions as far as, we're going to discuss a little bit the rankings, a little bit of a taste of a preview for you guys. We're going to go into some sleepers that we like as positions, some busts that we like to position, and we'll close it out with a bold take or a hot take, bold prediction, hot take, whatever you want to label it there. So today's episode, going to start at the top here. We're going to talk about quarterbacks. And so, Tad, really quick before we go into the fantasy aspect, maybe give a little bit of fantasy spin on this, but the Colts have named Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback over Anthony Richardson. Your thoughts on that with that decision?
I hate you. I was in a good mood. Why are you doing this to me? No, yeah. It's too funny because when that news, hit the stream or wherever the hell you call it, hit the ticker. How about that for an old saying? Kids, the ticker is a thing that scrolls across. That's how people used to get their news. When it hit my Twitter feed, I don't know. I mean, this just justifies everything. You guys were all laughing at me, saying I was exaggerating when I stormed off the set when we drafted him. Oh, almost direct quote from you. Oh, you don't know, it could work out. And I said no because he's a great quarterback post-snap, but pre-snap, he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. I don't care, man. We're tanking for Nussmeier. We're tanking for Klubnik. Hopefully Manning comes out if the Colts get the first overall pick. I don't care. The season's already lost. We suck. We signed Xavier Howard is going to be our number 2 corner. Like, we're so unbelievably fucked.
So no sort of glimmer of hope of fantasy relevant.
You're starting Daniel Jones. Did you see the quote from Psyche where it was like, well, what's your faith in Daniel Jones considering he's gone, 20-44 in his career and 3-13 last season? And Steichen's quote, I'm not making this up, was, well, the 2022 season, he did really well.
I think he's hoping to capture that magic again. I don't know. We'll see how it goes there for sure. Yeah.
There's no fantasy hope. Don't do Jonathan Taylor because they're just going to blitz us on every play. Daniel Jones isn't even draftable. Neither is Anthony Richardson, even though he's probably going to start at some point this season. maybe
All right.
Josh Downs. I don't fucking know. Like, it's just no, stay away from the Colts. Like I can't believe I'm about to say this, but the IND next to the person's name basically makes them undraftable this year. Thank you so much, because now I'm pissed off. God damn it. Where's Peyton?
Well, okay, since I sort of kicked it off there, I think like we talked about, let's sort of kick off this episode by giving a sort of preview of each other's, rankings here. And so it's like, I looked at your 1 through 12 rankings. You looked at my 1 through 12 rankings. So I'll give you the first crack here because I sort of let off with all that Colts talk, obviously there. So looking at my 1 through 12 rankings, we're not going to go into all the specific numbers, obviously, but just what sort of stood out to you as far as like you felt it was a miss, you felt like, you're kind of surprised that he was there, but just, what was the reaction there, and just, talking point that we can go for here.
So do we want to go, should we go like preview our top 8 and leave the other 4 up for debate, or do you just want to go right into it?
No preview. Like I said, that is where it benefits to follow us on our social media handles, people. That's where you can see the full 1 through 12. This is just a small taste of what it is. So yeah, what do you got?
I will say this because some of my friends say this. I'm like, well, I don't have Twitter. I don't have Instagram. Get one.
Exactly.
It's 2025. People, get with it. All right. I mostly agreed with your top 10. I only have one real issue. Okay. The hell are you doing with Justin Fields? For those of you who don't know, without a social media account, he has Justin Fields as what, your number 7 quarterback?
Look at my rankings, actually number 8.
Number 8. Okay. Here's why I thought you had him at number 7, because I do kind of understand where you're coming from, because in his 6 starts with the Steelers last season, which, by the way, seemed like way fewer to me. Like, when I was doing my research, I was like, wow, he really started 6 games? He did finish as QB7 in those 6 starts. However, solely because of his injury history, I'm worried about him being able to do that consistently, because how about this? He has never played a full season in his entire career. Closest he got was the second year in the league where he played 15 games. That year he had 17 passing touchdowns and 11 picks. Now I know what some people are going to say. You're cherry picking because he did have 8 rushing touchdowns. So 25 overall, 11 interceptions. But even with that, that's fairly mediocre for 15 games played. On top of that, you look at the consistency of play. He is very up and down during his time in Chicago. And you look at the Jets offense, they're really not all that good. I know people are going to be like, oh, Garrett Wilson. Can you name 2 more receivers on the Jets roster?
They still have Allen Lazard.
Yes.
And the guy that you messed his name up when we were talking about Malachi Nelson, but it's Malachi Corley. This is the actual Malachi Corley with the Jets. So
so we have an unproven, I would say, still rookie receiver, even though he did play last year, but played in quotes.
He had that very Ricky. I don't know if you remember this stat, but he had that very famous play where I think he did an end around. And he reached for the end zone, but they knocked it out beforehand, and it ended up going out of bounds, and it ended up being a touchback. And there's a lot of people screaming the name of Malachi Corley, especially if you're a Jets fan.
And when that's the most memorable play,
that's fair. That's fair.
That says something. And then we have a guy that cannot produce unless his quarterback is named Aaron Rodgers. I'm utterly shocked the Steelers have not traded for him yet. Can you name another? Okay, so you did name 3 props. I'm going to push a little further. Can you name a 4th receiver on that roster? Not a tight end.
Not a tight end. Okay, fair.
Yeah. No Mason Taylor.
Do they still have Xavier Gibson?
They do not.
Okay.
They do. That was a lie. All right. For my point being, though, is their wide receiver depth chart is Garrett Wilson, Tyler Johnson, Xavier Gibson, Brandon Smith, Josh Reynolds.
Josh Reynolds, okay.
Jamal Pritchett, Allen Lazard, Malachi Nelson, and Irvin Charles. I did that one on purpose. Shut up.
I know.
I am not confident whatsoever. And if you read any fantasy preview or profile of Justin Fields, it's all like, plus he has Mason Taylor. We don't know if Mason Taylor is going to be good or not because he's a rookie tight end out of LSU. For those of you who don't know, I'm getting so fired up. Even Cap has to come in. All right, buddy.
It's like, calm down. I like Justin Fields too.
I know. The job is my therapy animal. Thank you. See, I know TSA says you're not a therapy cat. They said that's not a thing. But anyway, point being is I do like the promise of Justin Fields. I hope I'm wrong about this, but having him as, especially the way we do our rankings, I know I'm calming down, buddy. I'm trying my best. Thank you. Okay, right in the lap. Batman ears. You do your rankings as going into the draft. I do mine as where they'll finish
exactly
at the end of the season. If you had him as number 7 number 8 as at the end of the season, I'd be a little less fired up. Having him as QB8 going into the season, I think that is a massive unnecessary risk to take.
That's fair. Everything that you listed is completely fair. I think for me, it's not so much the passing ability, it's the fact that he brings the mobile aspect to the offense, right? Because if you look at his time when he was with the Chicago Bears, he scored over 17 fantasy points per game in year 2, that year that you said where he played all 17 games. He scored 17 points per game in that season. He also rushed for 1,000 yards that season, scored 25 total touchdowns, and he finished top 10 among fantasy quarterbacks in PPR leagues. He also finished 9th in MVP voting. So I think when I look at this offense, and you also have to look at the time when he was with Pittsburgh most recently. So it's like, this is even recent track history. During his time with Pittsburgh, when he was the starting quarterback for them for the first 6 weeks of the season, he was 6th at the position in PPR leagues as well. So it's like, this guy was still able to find a way to sort of make plays with his legs. He threw every so often. It didn't look great. I will admit that. That's no secret there. But the gift that he was sort of bringing to his offense is the mobile aspect. So I think you look at what Aaron Glenn and this offense is bringing with their offensive coordinator. I think it's Tony Engstrand. I know Tanner Engstrand. Tanner Engstrand. That's the notes that I have here.
Impressive. I actually know that, so that's impressive.
They want to bring a run-first element to this offense. Obviously, there's all those rumors about them possibly trading Breece Hall, but they still have Braylon Allen on the team. So it's like, I think they want to lead with the running attack. And I think that's where Justin Fields sort of fits this offense then. So it's like, yeah, maybe you'll force feed Garrett Wilson, and that's exactly where he's going to get a lot of his passing yardage as far as his marks there. But I think the running aspect where he could get somewhere between 600 to 700 yards and maybe add in 6 rushing touchdowns, that automatically puts him in that upper rank of being a fantasy quarterback as far as where he's going to finish. So for me, because of that mobile aspect, I think I trust him a little bit more to bring more fantasy points to my roster. So that's why I put them there at 8.
And again, I'm not cheering against Justin Fields. I was really excited when he signed with the Jets. I just think the Jets really didn't do enough in the offseason to throw a supporting cast around him. That makes me a believer because I like Justin Fields. I was saying that the Bears should have stuck with Justin Fields.
Yeah, we were both in that boat. In that boat. That's like, they should have stuck with Fields and built around him.
And I kind of still stand by that, but I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's not his fault if he doesn't succeed this year. It's the Jets' fault.
Which is what the Jets always do, right?
Yeah, the Jets are going to Jets. And Chris Ballard's going to Chris Ballard. It's just like there are certain things you're just used to doing. God, I can't wait till he gets fired.
All right, Tad. So going from one mobile quarterback to another, because looking at your rankings here, there's a quarterback that I was surprised to, and just once again, to sort of reiterate something that you already brought up here, is that your rankings are based on where the player is going to finish in the top 12. So that is your rankings. Mine is based on pre-draft rankings as to where you should probably draft these guys. So honestly, guys, if you work with both of them together, you can sort of build a good strategy for how you want to attack your draft and how you want to plan your roster there. So looking at yours, you have Kyler Murray finishing as QB7.
I'm sorry.
Who? Kyler Murray.
There we go.
Yeah. So I'm actually kind of surprised that you have him that high.
You want me to defend my stance, or you want to?
Of course. No,
okay,
go for it.
Well, before you get into all your fancy stats and stuff.
Yeah, I got stats to back it up, but I'll let you speak on it first.
Two main reasons. One, he's a mobile quarterback. And
okay,
two,
fair.
Have you seen the Cardinals schedule this year?
Yeah.
Okay. There are only 3 defenses that they play all year who really scare me. I'm sorry, buddy. Your 49ers are no longer on that list. Seattle scares me a little bit. Dallas scares me a little bit, although that's largely Micah Parsons' base. Or sorry, 4. Seattle. Goddamn, this is what happens when I take too much time off. Seattle, the Rams, Houston, and Cincinnati are really the only 4 defenses they face that scare me. The other 14, 13, whatever, math. It's not that scary. Like they play some of the softest defenses for the entire season. I think that Kyler Murray is finally going to get his act together this year. And let's not forget that he is now entering his second year with Marvin Harrison Jr. He is going to be, but we're going to discuss that more in the wide receivers episode. He is going to be a player that I think absolutely explodes on the fantasy scene this year.
Fair. Okay. So let me go into my notes here as to why I feel like this is a little too high. So in 17 games last season, Murray had only 3 games with multiple passing touchdowns and 0 interceptions. He also had 7 games last season where he scored over 20 fantasy points, and that is too low for a mobile starting quarterback in the league in the NFL right now. I feel like that's just a little bit too low. Also because of the fact that in the first season that he's played in every regular season game since 2020, and he also finished as QB 18 in PPR leagues last year. So he played all 17 games. He had multiple games with more than 20 points, but I feel like that should have been a lot higher. So I mean, that screams to me that it's worrisome to me, because if you go back to 2020 when he played a full season again, he finished as QB3 in PPR leagues back in 2020. So normally having a quarterback go out there and make plays through the air and on the ground is sort of fantasy gold, like I said. But just for me, Murray has just not shown year over year improvement, especially I know they had some turnover with the coaching staff and change of the roster and things like that. But I just still don't see it from Kyler Murray, especially we talked about it with the whole contract that he was demanding, and just like, did he deserve that contract? I don't know. I personally don't think he did. But then you bring up Marvin Harrison Jr. Perfectly makes sense. Exactly like you're laying out with the Jets, where it's like outside of Garrett Wilson, who can they trust in the passing offense? Outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride, who else are you trusting in this offense? That is the biggest thing that worries me the most with Kyler Murray's development this year. So it's like Marvin Harrison Jr., yes, second year breakout, I can possibly see it. Trey McBride continues his dominance. Cap's getting on board with me here. They're just like, I don't know who to trust in this Cardinals offense.
Speaking of mobility, good Lord.
I know. Cap needs to go out there and catch passes from Kyler Murray. I think that's the thing here. But just like Michael Wilson shows some flashes. There's Greg Dortch that showed some flashes, but just like nowhere near consistent for me to really rely on these guys being solid producers in the passing game for the Cardinals. Just overall, it just doesn't strike me to me that's like Kyler Murray's just lack of improvement, the lack of pass catchers in the pass offense. It just worries me a lot that just like, even with the breakout of Marvin Harrison Jr., if it's coming this year, I think it is. But it's like, even with that, QB7 just a little too high for me to finish that high.
Okay, one, you put some respect on Zay Jones's name.
Once again, another player that's just not consistent enough for me.
But I agree with everything you said, but largely where I was coming from with, does he deserve this contract or not, wasn't lack of ability. It was consistency in terms of staying on the field. When he was on the field, he largely showed up. And again, with such a soft, a soft schedule, and you kind of gloss over this point, but I think it's a really big point for what really feels like once in his career, with consistency in terms of scheme, in terms of coaching staff, in terms of basically everything from one year to the other. For the first time in his career, they've been Alex Smithing this guy since he came into the league. So I really think that is a point that is getting way glossed over. And if he can stay healthy, which to be fair is a really big if, I do think he has big time QB7 potential that you could get at, I should have looked up his ADP, that you could probably get outside the top 10.
Yeah, he's going outside the top 10. That's for sure.
Yeah,
but I think for him to finish that high, it still worries me a lot. So, yep, you could be that guy that takes that risk, especially the LAFB Fantasy League. Fine with me, but that's not something that I'm going to invest in this year. So we'll see how it all plays out. There. All right, so moving away from our rankings, like I said, we only want to give a slight tease there. Make sure you follow social media for all of our full rankings there with the quarterback position here. Let's talk about the position in general here. So let's talk about some busts, let's talk about some sleepers, then let's close it with a bold prediction. So do you want to start with the bust or sleeper first?
Let's go bust.
Okay, let's go bust here. So who is your bust at the position here that you're sort of avoiding at all costs?
Oh, man, this is partially feeling based, but I do have some stats to back it up. I am avoiding Jared Goff this year.
Okay.
Detroit scares me a lot.
Okay, what do you got?
So, Goff finishes QB7 last year.
Yes.
Before that, the highest he finished, and this is with both Sean McVay and Ben Johnson at the helm, was QB 11. So, like, not terrible, not great. There are just so many questions surrounding him of, like, can you trust him to stay a consistent QB1? How will he fit in this new system? How will the offensive line hold up? Because you look at, obviously, Ben Johnson leaving, which is, and I think this speaks volumes of, during the NFL draft, ESPN has on the ticker of, like, key additions, key losses. Key losses for the Detroit Lions on that ticker was Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. How often do you see coordinators listed?
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
And not just that, I'm really interested to see how this affects our line. And because this story came and went very fast, was the retirement of Frank Ragnow.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I could see that having a huge effect on the Detroit offensive line. So it's just, there's so many question marks going around of, and I know it's largely the same system, but will it work without Ben Johnson? I don't know. I'm not saying no, but that is a massive question mark. And then you look at, okay, let's assume that, I'm wrong and Jared Goff is doing great. You make the playoffs, on his back, and you're like, I'm doing fantastic. Let's look at the Detroit schedule in November and December. They play the Eagles, the Rams, the Bears, the Vikings, the Steelers, and the Cowboys and Packers. That is a rough time, especially in your fantasy playoffs when you really need your quarterback to show up. That is rough. Goff's current ADP sits as the 11th quarterback behind guys like Caleb Williams, Dak Prescott, and Justin Herbert. I trust all of those guys more than I trust Jared Goff going into this season. So do I think Jared Goff is going to have like a disaster of a season? Not necessarily, but I think a lot of people are drafting him, expecting him to consistently perform like he did last year. And I don't know if he's going to be able to do that on a consistent basis with Ben Johnson out of the picture. And let's also not forget, Detroit's looked kind of iffy this preseason. I know it's just the preseason, but I don't know. Detroit in general, I think the only two guys I really trust on that team are Gibbs and St. Brown. Even Jameson Williams, I'm going to stay away from.
I think the one thing, too, that's going to make people want to trust Jared Goff, but they shouldn't, because I feel like this is a trap as well, is if you look at the past 3 years with Jared Goff, he has improved his rank at the position at the end of the season when it comes to fantasy quarterbacks year over year. So it's like you look at that first year before Ben Johnson was the offensive coordinator. I think he finished, like I said, I think like a QB 11 or something like that, or just outside the top 10. The next year, I think he finished at like QB 9 or QB 8. And then this past year, I think you said he finished at QB 7, right? So it's like year over year, he was improving. So it's like, okay. Then that, I think there's like an ESPN article that's like, Jared Goff was the throwaway in the deal that brought Matthew Stafford to LA, right? But it's like he ended up making a big improvement with Detroit. So it's like people are seeing that. It's like, okay, this is the Jared Goff that people expected with him being the former number 1 overall pick by the Los Angeles Rams, a handful of years ago, right? So it's like, I think just that change in the coordinator is going to make a huge factor. I don't think they made enough proven improvements on their offensive in general, I should say. The offensive line with their time with Frank Ragnow, that makes a huge difference. But it's like, I don't think I like their offensive additions to the skill position groups as much either. I know they still have a lot of holdovers, but just like, I don't know if they're going to see that much more of an improvement with a change in offensive coordinator there. So I think, Jared Goff's one of those guys that I think with Ben Johnson, I felt so much more comfortable with him as my starting quarterback. But with the change here, he is a guy that, I am also like, I feel it's a fantasy trap. Like a lot of people are going to draft him and be like, you know what? It's fine. He's got all of his weapons. He's got Gibbs. He's got Montgomery. He's got St. Brown. He's got Sam Laporta will have a bounce back year. But just like, I think just the slight nuances is going to make a difference here. And he'll do good. But to expect him to be your QB1 each and every week, that I think is where the trap is.
I think he's a largely matchup based. Like he would be like top of my waiver priority or a very good backup that you could use as trade bait when, someone eventually goes down. But again, with that ADP of 11, clearly some people think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback or close to it. And I very well could be. But again, I would trust Caleb Williams more, especially with, the added the added rushing, numbers on top of that. Because Jared Goff is one of the few pocket passers remaining in the league right now.
It's true. He's very much chained to that pocket there. So going to a guy who's actually switching teams and signed a huge contract in the NFC West with the Seattle Seahawks, my boss is Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
I think, what we saw last year with the Minnesota Vikings, I think everything went right for him. I think Kevin O'Connell being the head coach, being a former quarterback himself, coming from the Sean McVay tree, I think just everything aligned for Darnold to find success in that offense the way that he did last year. I mean, he posted career numbers and all passing metrics, what made Minnesota one of the top teams in the league. But I think the Vikings made the right move to stick with JJ McCarthy, their former first round pick, 10th overall from 2 years ago, essentially playing his rookie year this year, and let Sam Darnold walk in free agency. So I think for me, it's just, I think we're going to see more of the old Darnold compared to what we saw last year. I don't think it's going to be as bad as what we saw in the old Darnold, but I think it's just not going to be as good as what we saw last year. So if you also look just at the last year, when he had his career season, in the final 2 games of the season, this is the last regular season game where Minnesota had to beat Detroit to win the division, and then the very first playoff game that the Minnesota Vikings had as well. Darnold averaged 205.5 passing yards, 0.5 passing touchdowns, and 0.5 interceptions. He also took 5.5 sacks on average across both of those games as well. Darnold is not shifting from an offense that was more geared. It's now shifting, to an offense that was more geared towards passing the ball in Minnesota. Now to one in Seattle that's going to be geared more towards running the football here. We already talked about Mike McDonald's the defensive guy. He's handing things off to Clint Kubiak. I think he is he's coming for the Kyle Shanahan tree. So it's like there's hope that he could sort of bring some passing elements to the offense. But from his former stints in New Orleans, also in Houston, it didn't work out all that well. I think they'll lean more in the running game with Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker. They drafted Damian Martinez out of Miami. So it's like I think they'll lean more in the running game, and Sam Darnold will very much play a similar role to what we saw with Geno Smith, where it's like he's going to control the offense, limit the turnovers, and just get the ball down the field very methodically, leaning more on the run game there. So coming to Seattle, like I said, I think just the change in the scenery, it may be good for Darnold. He may not regress as bad, but for people to envision him to have the season that he had, he's like, oh no, this is the Darnold that we envisioned as a former 3rd overall pick in the draft. It's like, I don't think he's going to be that guy that we saw last year. We'll see some good weeks. We'll see a lot of bad weeks. But I think for people to envision him to be their starting quarterback for their fantasy roster, I think it's just, the offensive line doesn't help either in Seattle. I think Minnesota had a very stout offensive line to protect him. I think in Seattle, I think we're going to see.
Careful. I care about you. Be careful criticizing that offensive line.
They have good pieces, but I think they have pieces on the edges. The interior is where I have a lot more worry as far as who's going to protect him on the inside there. So that is where I worry about. I think that's going to lead to a lot of bad decisions. I think some turnovers there as well. So for me, Sam Darnold, change of scenery, not as good for fantasy managers.
You didn't protect me when they came after me. I'm not protecting you when they come after you.
Okay, fine.
I'm just saying, those Seahawk fans are ridiculous. But yeah, looking at their team. Oh my God, Marquise Valdez-Scantling is a Seahawk?
Yeah, MBS.
Good God. They are desperate. Do you know who their starting tight end is?
It's not Noah Fant, because I think he's with somebody else. I can't remember who it is. Oh, he's with Washington. He was in the game yesterday. I don't know who the starting tight end is now.
AJ Barner.
Okay.
Out of
Michigan, I think, right?
Oh shit, I thought it was Iowa.
Oh, okay. It might be Iowa. I thought it was Michigan, but I could be wrong.
Damn it! No, you're right.
Yeah.
Damn it. Anyway, no, I think that we were talking about this in the offseason too, is whoever signs Darnold, that's fool's gold, because that wasn't Darnold producing last year. That was Justin Jefferson producing last year. That was TJ Hawkinson producing last year. That was Jordan Addison producing. That Vikings offense can make anyone look good. To satisfy my offseason itch, I've been watching top 50 NFL moments of all time. And of course, one of the plays that always pops up there is the Minneapolis Miracle. That was a terrible throw by Case Keenum.
Yeah.
Well, even going all the way back then to Stephon Diggs, who's been on 2-3 different teams by now, that Minnesota offense has always been, making quarterbacks look better than they were. Now, to Seattle's credit, I'm not going to call it a bad signing, because what was it, 2-3 years for $40 million? It really wasn't 3 years. So it's not a long-term deal that's going to screw over their cap space forever. Saints. Excuse me. Sorry, allergies. So like looking forward, that's not bad. But yeah, if you're drafting Darnold at all, really, I think that is a massive mistake. He is not going to have the season he's going to have. And let's not forget, DK Metcalf is gone. Tyler Lockett's gone. This is a completely different Seattle offense. Maybe a matchup. I don't even know if he's a matchup based quarterback at this point. Like, it is entirely like I will form an opinion on him in late September. But until then, I'm not touching him with a 10-yard pole.
Yeah, I think it's just exactly like I said. I think it's going to be fool's gold if you decide to draft him. I think it's just going to be too much of a trap. Bigger than Jared Goff, I'd say, easily, for sure.
All yeah, right, my only thing is, are people expecting Darnold to be on the same level as Goff?
I think when you get to that level, I feel like they're in the same range when it comes to ADP at the quarterback. I'd like to think Jared Goff's a little bit higher because maybe they feel a lot better about their skill positions compared to Seattle. Because like you said, it's like they let DK Metcalf to trade him away. They let Tyler Lockett walk. So all they have is JSN and the hopefully resurgence of Cooper Kupp and clearly
and MBS. The guy who's been showing up this preseason, my boy, Torrey Horton. I've been talking that guy up for 2 years now.
So yeah, that's the hope there that hopefully these guys can eventually break out for him. So it's like, yeah, that sort of worries me too. So it's like maybe Jared Goff's a little bit higher, but I think, you're seeing a lot more of these tier systems. I think Darnold and Goff would fall into the same tier for me. I think when I'm looking at articles there, but yeah, I think either one, I'm not trusting to draft this year for sure. Redraft leagues for sure. Let's flip the coin here, Tad. Let's get to a sleeper. Who's a guy that you think a lot of people are going to ignore that could become a really good addition to your fantasy lineup, especially if you miss out on some of those top-level quarterbacks at the top of your draft?
Sure.
Who's that?
I don't know.
I think you're still a little rusty. I just can't hear you.
DJ Stroud, you fucker.
DJ Stroud. Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, he's good. And this is the crazy thing. So CJ Stroud's ADP is shockingly bad. Which makes sense because he was QB 27 last year by the end of the year.
It was bad.
Do you want to guess where his average draft position is?
Right now?
Among quarterbacks.
I think it's outside the top 20.
You're close.
Is it 19?
Getting closer. It's QB 17.
17. Okay.
Which makes sense. I understand why Faith is a little rattled in him. But with that said, I do think this is a prime year for a third-year comeback for him because Nico Collins is back. They've already connected on a score this preseason. Nick Chubb adds another dynamic to that run game. So I think that takes a lot of pressure off CJ Stroud. This offensive, they did hire a new offensive coordinator, so will be, a different system, hopefully a better system. And let's be honest, it's not like that offensive line can get much worse. And I know they traded Laramie Tunsil. I personally think that was a good trade. That's a bit of a hot take, I know. And let's also not forget they invested the first 3 draft picks they had into the offensive line. So they've invested a lot of time, money, and resources into this offensive line. And let's not forget, overall, CJ Stroud's good. No one was looking at him and being like, oh, this is Stroud's fault. Everybody recognized it was everything around him. Just like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. So you'll also look at the AFC South with the defenses he'll be facing twice a year, and the Titans, the Colts, and the Jaguars. None of those defenses are scaring me. Maybe the Jags with that pass rush. That's a pretty good pass rush. I'll give that to them. That secondary still struggling. I think Travis Hunter so far in the preseason, I like him more as a receiver than a corner. Bottom line being is he faces those 3 teams twice a year, so that's pretty easy. And the final 3 games of the Texans season, which means fantasy playoffs for you if CJ Stroud does step up, is against the Texans, the Chargers, final 4 games, the Texans, the Chargers. God damn it. Don't ever let me go on vacation again. The final 3 games for the Texans.
Oh, my Lord.
Come up against the Chargers, the Cardinals, and the Raiders.
Okay, wow.
That is a dream
compared to what you were saying before, but okay.
So I think that CJ Stroud, especially if you can get him in the later rounds, could end up being like the steal of the entire draft. Not just with steal of the quarterbacks, but steal of the entire draft.
Yeah, I think CJ Stroud's success in fantasy football really hinges, and I think obviously for the Texans as well, hinges on that offensive line. If that offensive line can protect him a lot better, very similar to what we saw in his rookie year, not what we saw in last year, then I think we'll see that very much that rookie year CJ Stroud that we saw that was like going to, be one of the premier quarterbacks in the league and really just, give us a little bit of hope that, the Texans are, on the right way there, that the quarterback position's in good hands after lots of these older quarterbacks retired and all this stuff. But just like, yeah, what we saw last year was just, was that a fluke rookie year, or is that purely on the offensive line? What's going to happen here? So I think here, if the offensive line plays at a high level and protects CJ Stroud and they can get the running game going to ease some of the pressure as well, then yes, CJ Stroud can definitely have a great bounce back year. And that is ultimate value for you then, because yeah, if he's going as QB 17, most redraft leagues he'll go undrafted. Like, I mean, that's surprising to me, but yeah, in redraft leagues he probably will go undrafted unless you're one of those teams that likes to go with a backup quarterback. That's possibly the situation there. So, but yeah, I think 100% for me, if that offensive line plays well, then I think he has a very good chance to sort of bounce back there. I think there's no question about that there for sure. So yeah, we'll see how that offensive line plays out. Because yeah, for me, I do agree with you that hot take of Larry Tunsil being traded is a good decision. I don't see it as a good decision. I think he was one of the more stalwart players on that offensive line. So yeah, I think I just really concerned to see how that offensive line is going to look without him. I know they drafted Aronte Ursary out of Minnesota. So it's like, let's see if he could step in and fill that void. But just, yeah, that's the biggest critical for me for CJ Stroud and the Texans' offensive success is how that offensive line does. Now, sort of sticking with that 2023 NFL draft tag, you're making the transition sort of easy for me here. I'm going to go with the guy that went number 1 overall in that draft, Bryce Young. Bryce Young is my sleeper this year. I'm sort of drinking the Kool-Aid on the success that he had at the end of last season. I think that should carry over this year because, I mean, there was talk that Bryce Young was getting close to labeled with that dreaded bust label as the former number 1 overall pick for the 2023 NFL draft. He hasn't quite lived up to the expectations and even replaced by Andy Dalton for a 5-game stretch during the season last year. While he was replaced by Andy Dalton, though, Young saw some good time, sitting on the bench, observing what was happening, being able to sort of soak things up, not have that pressure on him anymore. And he did return to starting lineup starting in week 8 onwards. This includes a great 3-game stretch down at the very end of the season for week 16 to 18. He had 3 games with multiple touchdowns, 0 interceptions in his career. He's only had 4 games total with multiple touchdowns and no interceptions. 3 of them happened last season at the end of the season last year. So it's like there's hope that things can sort of rebound for him. I think Young is finally understanding what head coach Dave Canales is putting in place as far as the offense is there. You talk about the carryover. So heading into 2025, he's going to stick with Dave Canales there. You have to remember, too, that Frank Reich was the guy that drafted him. And so it's like for Dave Canales to sort of take over and re-implement the system and really just make sure that this guy is understanding what's given to him and sort of see that success, I think to have that year over year sort of transition to keep everything the same, I think that's going to speak volumes for Bryce Young to have a successful season here in 2025. You also add to the fact that they added a very key piece with the number 8 overall pick in this last year's draft with Teteroa McMillan. This gives Young a serious playmaker on the outside. If you've been watching preseason, I know, Tad, you already said it, where it's like, you got to take it with a grain of salt, but they've been getting the ball to McMillan, and he's been catching the ball. Like, he's been making some great catches.
So great. Even
in double coverage, there's times where he was still making catches. So, like, this is looking like a worthy investment for the Panthers to make sure that Young's development continues on the upward trajectory instead of going downwards there. So you also add in the fact that they got the chain mover in Hunter Renfrow. He comes back from a brief 1-year hiatus. Xavier Legette, 2nd-year player. Hopefully he improves from what we saw last year. They still have the veteran Adam Thielen. They got the tight end Jatavion Sanders. I think they got a lot of pieces there to really give Bryce Young some solid, weapons to really just move this offense forward through the air. There are maybe some question marks at the running back position. I know we like Chuba Hubbard. They did sign Rico Dowdle. Jonathan Brooks obviously out for the entire year, most likely. And that offensive line saw some improvements. I'm not going to say it's going to be like one of the best in the leagues, but I think they made some key additions that I think they should be able to protect Bryce Young a little bit better, give him some solid running lanes, and just overall, Bryce Young maybe is not yet ready to insert himself into that top 12 discussion as far as a fantasy quarterback is concerned. But I think with this year, looking at 2026 and onwards, I think if he has a successful year this year, which I think he will, I think he'll be in that conversation 2026 onwards. Because I think he's got the offense around him now. Dave Canal sticks around. I think that's really going to help him as well. So yeah, Bryce Young, one of those guys off the waiver wire that you could grab and sort of stream for the rest of the season, especially if you're in a situation where you lose your starting quarterback for whatever reason. Bryce Young's a guy that I'm keeping on my radar as the season progresses.
Yeah, I really like this pick. A couple thoughts on it. One, do you want to know who the MVP of the Carolina Panthers is?
The current MVP?
Current, like the MVP of the Panthers over the last, let's say, 2 years.
2 years. I probably lean towards Chuba Hubbard then.
Nope.
No?
Give you one more guess.
Adam Thielen?
Nope.
Okay.
Whoever the hell hit Andy Dalton in his car.
Oh, wow. Okay, we went there.
I'm sorry, but let's not forget Bryce Young got benched, and the only reason he got back in was because Andy Dalton got fucking like T-boned at an interception.
Is this similar to like the Chargers where it's like Tyrod Taylor got punctured in the lung right in the sideline, and that led to Justin Herbert starting and Chargers fans are rejoicing?
Exactly. I actually completely forgot about that. Sorry, it just reminded me of a story. Fun fact, by the way. Oh, God, who was it? Jim Harbaugh is the reason the Colts got the first overall pick for Peyton Manning. Do you know why?
No, why?
He punched a broadcaster in the face and broke his hand as the starting quarterback with the Colts. And after that, the Colts season just plummeted.
Wow.
So I forgot which broadcaster it was, but whichever one pissed off Harbaugh enough to get him to punch you in the face, I salute you, sir. Anyway, that's ridiculous. The second point I want to bring up is this is another reason why I really like Bryce Young, and it wasn't someone the Panthers added, but it's actually someone they got rid of. Do you want to know who that is?
Miles Sanders?
Nope.
I don't know then.
Bryce Young no longer has to worry about the Harlan Matt Corral nipping at his heels.
I had hopes for Matt Corral.
I really know you did for some goddamn reason. Give me shit for Kyle Trask, but let's not forget you were writing Matt Corral for 2 years.
I was.
I will pay you $5 if you can tell me who he's with now.
Is he still in the XFL?
It's UFL now, but yes.
Okay, UFL. Yeah. Is he with the I don't know, the Houston Roughnecks?
He is with the Birmingham Stallions.
The Stallions, okay.
Who apparently the rumors are they are moving away from Birmingham. So I don't know who the hell they are now. But anyway, in all seriousness, I do like Bryce Young as a sleeper because for all the reasons you said, let's not forget, I think you already mentioned this, but Adam Thielen is still there. And if you were to ask me, like, seriously, who's the MVP of the Panthers over the last 2 years, it'd probably be him. Hubbard, do you have a good case for? But yeah, I think there's a lot of promise with this offense. Again, I mean, we talk about Alex Smith and guys like, Bryce Young's been a victim of that as well. The only thing, and this kind of goes into the debate we were having in the preseason last year of do you draft 2 quarterbacks or not? Like, do you have a quarterback on your bench? Some people say yes. I'm more of a believer in no. If you are going to take the risk with Bryce Young, I do think you have to have an insurance policy on your bench for him. But I do like him, especially as a matchup-based player. If he's going against the Falcons, who I think the Falcons did a lot for their pass rush, did do a whole lot for their secondary, so that's still a pretty weak secondary. The Saints are going to be a train wreck this season. So that is 4 matchups right there that is going to be a very good bye week fulfiller. So if you ask, I don't think he broke either of our top 12s, but he was definitely in the conversation in my head when putting together those rankings, because it would not surprise me if he did finish in the top 12.
Yeah, I think for me, like I said, I think he's going to have a good season this year, and then he's going to enter the conversation as a top 12, possibly even top 10 quarterback next year. but it really hinges on this season. But yeah, I like the pieces that he has around him now. I like the continuity with Dave Canales. And so, yeah, for me, if I was drafting 2 quarterbacks, I'm very much in that boat where it's like I just draft one as well. But if I took a risky option as my starting quarterback and I want to sort of assure it with a high upside pick, Bryce Young's that guy that I'm drafting as a second quarterback on my bench, or 100%. He is on my waiver wire, like, the watch list or whatever, right? The flag that you can sort of put for your players or whatever. He's a guy that I'm adding to that list as the season progresses, because if he's starting to do well, he's a name that I want to keep an eye on, especially once the bye weeks start to roll around. He's a guy that I can sort of insert there for sure. All right, Tad, let's get to the fun of the episode here. Let's get to our bold predictions and hot takes for the quarterback position here specifically. What do you got for me?
This man brings a very specific type of energy in the locker room. When it enters, you see it swinging around and you just go, that's a man right there.
Oh, God.
And you know why? It's because he brings big Penix energy.
Okay.
Penix.
I know.
All right. My bold take is that Michael Penix Jr. will finish as the top fantasy quarterback from the 2024 NFL draft.
Okay, for the 2024 NFL draft. Okay. All right.
So that means he will finish above first overall pick, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Aiden McDaniel, Bo Nix, and JJ McCarthy.
That's still a bit of a bold take. I like it. Okay. What do you got for me?
So,
how can you put it up here?
So let's address the elephant in the room known as Jaden Daniels. Like, how the hell is he going to finish above him? Couple things. One, Terry McLaurin is still holding. Is he even a hold in or is a hold out?
I think it's hold out. He wasn't even at the game yesterday.
Sure hold out. Yeah. So Terry McLaurin is still not part of this offense. So knowing my luck, they're going to sign a deal like 30 minutes after we're done recording.
Sure.
But supposedly there's some progress on that side. But even if there is, he's missed the entire preseason. That's going to put him a little behind the 8 ball. Brian Robinson Jr., I think by this time next week, probably going to be off the roster one way or another. So that's taking more, dynamic pieces away from this offense. And I think actually last night, which tells you when we were recording, last night's preseason actually proved a point I had already written down, which I think there was quite a bit of luck involved with Jane Daniels' rookie season that he didn't get absolutely murdered and miss a couple of games. Because even in the preseason, did you watch last night?
I did, yes.
Go down, man.
Yeah.
Like I know he got that touchdown, but like that was, I'm not even a Washington fan. I was like, oh my God.
Yes, that is not a risk you want to run in the preseason game.
So I think it's entirely possible that he will miss a couple games due to injury if he keeps running like that. It's not a matter of if, it's when, if he keeps doing shit like that. And that was a big draft critique you and I both had of him, of like, as a runner, he's very talented, but for the love of God, man, learn how to slide.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I remember that.
I'm kind of like, for this bold prediction to pay off, not saying I'm cheering for this to happen, but for this bold prediction to pay off, Jane Daniels is going to have to miss a couple games. So there's my prediction there. Caleb Williams, frankly, we just don't know. I know he looked, first off, I can already hear the Bears fans, Matt, yelling at me in the comments, be like, did you see us against the Bills? It was the Bills didn't play any starters. Fucking relax. That was their second string defense. So Bears fans, I'm excited for you, but just take it easy. Okay. It was week 2 of the preseason. All right. Relax. Secondly, I know, everybody always overanalyzes the preseason, but like we have been seeing some troubling tape of Bears practice with the nets and then him overthrowing some people. Reportedly, he was throwing like 4 picks of practice to start preseason. So it's still a question of if Caleb Williams is really going to thrive in this offense. So I don't think that's that tall of an order for Michael Penix to get above him in that offense. JJ McCarthy, I mean, you want to talk about some weird like up and down preseason rumors. I've heard that he's looked terrible. I've read that he's looked great. I don't know what the hell to expect from him, but mostly I think, and you and I were saying this during the draft, he's a game manager. So I don't think fantasy wise, especially, he's really going to blow up all that much. I think he's going to be like a Derek Carr type where it's like, okay, you're good for at least like 12 points. Occasionally you'll get above that 15-point mark, but for the most part, not really going to happen. Bo Nix in a tough division. I really don't have any stats to back that up. I'm just, on a prayer, and I'm hoping that Sean Payton leans more on the run game now that they have RJ Harvey. With Michael Penix Jr., I think you could argue it's between him and Caleb Williams for who's surrounded by the better offense. I would say we have more known playmakers with the Falcons. DJ Moore slightly disappointed last season. Keenan Allen's gone. Colson Loveland, I think, is going to be a very good part of that Bears offense, but he's still a rookie. With the Falcons, you have Kyle Pitts, who needs to do well this year. Otherwise, it's very possible he washes out of the NFL entirely. Yeah, Drake London, who we know can produce with a crappy Kirk Cousins and a crappy Matt Ryan, and basically any crappy quarterback out there. And you have Bijan Robinson, who will in all likelihood be a universal top 3 pick in redraft leagues. So I think that, and plus Michael Penix looked surprisingly good last year as a rookie, which I personally was not expecting. I'm happy to see it because, again, Michael Penix for Heisman, he was robbed. I will die on that hill. But point being is, I think there's a very real possibility Michael Penix could be the best fantasy quarterback in that year's draft class.
I'm assuming you're talking for just this year, right? Or are you talking about going forward too?
Who knows? You'll have to tune in next year.
Okay, all right.
How's that for a tease? Do you remember how to do this? You asked me before we start recording. Yeah, I remember how to do this.
I don't know. Based on you trying to rattle off the last few games for
I need to start double spacing my notes, man.
Yeah, that's a bit of a bold take because, I think you sort of laid off all the players that you're listed off there. It's like, JJ McCarthy is actually one of the episodes I did right before you. He's one of those guys that I'm targeting out of your normal draft. So it's like a waiver wire additions. Like JJ McCarthy's one of those guys that I'm sort of liking there. Caleb Williams with the addition of Ben Johnson, it's like you get that mixed bag where it's like people are saying he looks terrible. But in that game against Buffalo, he looked pretty good, but it came against second stringer. So it's like, how much can you judge that? Exactly like you laid out with Jaden Daniels. It's like, how much can that running around and just like how much of that offense can carry over, just like success there. Now you have a target on your back sort of situation. So it's like, how good is he going to be? So it's like, there's a lot of question marks. I do agree with that. Drake May has been like the talk of preseason right now. Like he's been killing it a lot. So I don't know whether that's like, fool's gold or whether that's actual legitimate. Stephon Diggs has been like, the question about like, whether he's showing up or what kind of Stephon Diggs we're going to get Patriots camp, right? So it's just like how that's going to look. So Michael Penix, I think, has probably the most stability, even if I want to say that, like you said, with the offensive weapons around him and all that stuff, but just like, it's still a little bit of an unproven commodity. He's one of those guys I actually haven't heard much about during preseason about like, has he been doing good? Has he been doing bad? I really don't know. I haven't heard that much. It's all to talk about. I think just Kyle Pitts, that whether he's going to break out again, that's been overtaking everything when it comes to Falcons talk. So that's
the preseason is one of those things. It's a cliche, but no news is usually good news when it comes to preseason.
True. That's fair. That is very fair. That's very fair. I'm going to go from a young quarterback, Tad, to a veteran quarterback, a multi-time MVP winner, multi-time Super Bowl winner. And I'm saying this guy is not going to get finished in the top 12 at the position, and that is Patrick Mahomes. Long-standing, fantasy boon at the position.
Are you just trying to get all the most rabid fan bases to come after us? I just got back.
Maybe a little bit, yeah. Maybe that's sort of
the special state right now. I can't take being yelled at.
Maybe that's why I sort of bring it up, is because like now you're here. If I'm on my own, then I'd play a little bit safer. But now I sort of had that extra sort of protection here. But I think this. Here's an interesting statistic from last year, Tad, for Patrick Mahomes specifically. He was third in the NFL in passing attempts. Good, right? But he was seventh in the NFL in passing yards, and he was ninth in passing touchdowns. Mahomes has now had back-to-back seasons throwing for under 30 passing touchdowns. 2 seasons in a row, he's thrown under 30 passing touchdowns. So you look at this team now, I think they're built more on having a strong defense and running the ball effectively. Mahomes just has to do enough. When he has to put the ball in his hands to really make plays, he can still do that. But the electricness that we saw from Patrick Mahomes back when he first broke out into the league back in 2018, where he threw 50 touchdowns and he was the QB1 and all of that, I think those days are gone. I think the Patrick Mahomes that we see now, he played 16 games. He scored over 20 fantasy points in only 4 of the games that he played last season. So that doesn't scream to me excitement from the position there. He's averaged about 17 and a half fantasy points per game in back-to-back seasons as well. That's not something that I want from a starting quarterback in the league. I know I brought it up about mobile quarterbacks, but if you're a premier fantasy quarterback, I need more than 20 points for you per game on an average. And that's not what Mahomes has been doing past 2 seasons. He also, Mahomes finished as the 12th best fantasy quarterback in PPR leagues last year, which was the lowest in his career since he came into the league. We're talking about like surrounding offenses around some of these quarterbacks that we've already brought up earlier. I sort of question what Mahomes has, because it's like you got Rashee Rice. There's apparently going to be a suspension for him at the end of September. So he's going to play a handful of games and then he'll get suspended by, I don't know, 8 games, 6 games, 10 games, the rest of the season. Who knows how that's going to shape out. So if you miss out on Rashee Rice, there's a key weapon gone. I think we've already talked about on the podcast tab where it's like Travis Kelce is purely now a postseason type of player. I know he finished, I think, like at 6th or 7th at the position, but he just doesn't look like the same guy anymore. He is not the dynamic tight end that we once saw at the early part of Mahomes' career. He is not that sort of level of tight end. I think he's pretty much saving his body until he gets to the end of the season, and that's where he turns it up. That's no going to help you in the regular season, especially in fantasy football, right? Xavier Worthy had a very killer Super Bowl, but that was in garbage time. So it's like, how much can I rely on that carrying over in the regular season? We know he's got the speed, but can he actually translate that into being a more consistent weapon on the outside? Marquise Hollywood Brown, I love the guy, but the guy just can't stay healthy. So it's like, if he's missing games out of the year, if he can't play a full 17-game season for the Kansas City Chiefs, how much can I trust him in the offense as well? They got some other pieces. I like Jalen Royals out of Utah State, but that's another rookie that I just don't know how that's going to shape out there. So just, I got a lot of questions on the receiving weapons for Patrick Mahomes to think that they could sort of go back to that offense that they once were, where they're high octane and they're airing it out all the time. And, the days of, Sammy Watkins and Tyreek Hill and prime Travis Kelce, it's like those days are gone. And then you also look at the fact that it's like, maybe they did make additions to the receiving room, but they made additions to the backfield. So it's like Isaiah Pacheco dealt with the injuries. So they traded for Elijah Mitchell from my San Francisco 49ers. They added Brashard Smith out of your alumnus in SMU, former receiver converted to a running back. So you got that sort of dual threat ability there. So he's going to be an addition. You also look at Kareem Hunt joining the system again after Isaiah Pacheco is out. So he looked pretty good in a fill-in role last year. So they got a pretty crowded backfield as well. So that speaks to me that they want to stick with the running game. So that sort of worries me about Patrick Mahomes. And then the big thing, Tad, what have we talked about this entire podcast episode? Lots of young quarterbacks are possibly going to emerge this coming season. We already talked about J.J. McCarthy. I know you're not high. I am. You talked about Michael Penix Jr. We talked about Drake May and CJ Stroud and all these guys, Bryce Young, who I brought up already. So it's like, I think a lot of those guys are hoping to have bounce back seasons or resurgent seasons. There's also guys like Trevor Lawrence apparently has been looking good at preseason under Liam Cohen. So maybe he bounces back. You already brought up CJ Stroud. Dak Prescott is my guy that I think could have a huge bounce back year under Brian Schottenheimer. You got, Cam Ward. A lot of people are talking about he's been killing it during preseason as well. Maybe he'll sort of insert himself into that conversation. Maybe not top 12 already, but just like, so I think you got the additions of all these other young quarterbacks that I think are in offenses that are ready to thrive a little bit faster compared to where the Chiefs are. They're just competing to win Super Bowls now, right? So it's like, that's where Patrick Mahomes, for me, I just don't think we're going to see the same guy. Maybe he'll touch QB 12 at the end of the year, but even that, like I said, that's very iffy for me. So for me, I'm sliding him outside the top 12. I don't think he finishes in the top 12.
Since 2019, guess how many times Patrick Mahomes has finished as a top 5 fantasy quarterback?
Top 5 since 2019?
2019, the last 6 years.
See, this is where it works against me because I think it's like 4.
Twice.
Okay, all right.
And one of those times was when he finished number 4. So like barely inside the top 5. So it just goes to show, I mean, this guy always happens. It's like, there's always a really good, it's like Ben Roethlisberger. Like he always won, but he was never really that good in fantasy. Like he had the occasional week where he'd go off, but in general, you were like, Big Ben, when it comes to fantasy, not that great. So I actually agree with this. I think, Mahomes is one of those guys, big name where, people are going to be like, oh, like first or second, possibly third quarterback off the board. And to me, like, honestly, like, kind of sit back and see if he slips, in which case, great, totally worth the risk. Maybe he goes off for another 50-yard, season, or 50-yard season.
50-yard season, that's impressive, Tad.
I don't know. He might be able to get there, not sure. 50-touchdown season. If not, then whatever, you know what you're getting. But yeah, if he doesn't slip, I'm not panicking. Now, if Josh Allen starts to, Josh Allen, to me, is like, he's the top dog. Yes. I'm sorry, Top Cat. He just jumped up. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry. There is no dog. So yeah, no, I actually don't think that's a necessarily bad take. And I think, this is a very good warning to people. In the words of Patrick Mahomes is overrated. That's his stat right there, not mine. I'm not saying that. I'm just echo chambering him.
Overrated when it comes to fantasy football. I will stand by that right now. I think the time of him, sort of being that premier guy is sort of gone now. I think he's just the guy that's sort of like, like I said, he's got a bigger target on his mind. It's just getting more Super Bowls, maybe trying to eclipse what Tom Brady has done in the league, right? So it's like, I think that's the different goal set, the mindset that he has with the Chiefs there, right? So it's like, yeah, I just think the fantasy performance is sort of gone. And I think just, yeah, he's sort of looking to sort of just, get to those types of accolades as opposed to being a fantasy player, right? So, yeah. So we'll see how it all plays out. But yeah, it should be a very interesting season there. But that'll close out our episode. What's going on?
Chiefs can't hire a sniper this fast, can they?
You're locked away in your room. I think she'd be okay.
I'm seeing red on the ceiling outside, man.
Well, that'll close out our episode about fantasy quarterbacks. Like we sort of talked about, we said multiple times at the top of the episode, throughout the episode as well, the best way you can find all of our rankings is to follow us on our social media handles. That is where you got my 1 through 12 rankings at the quarterback position, Tad's 1 through 12 rankings at the quarterback position. Mine are based on pre-draft rankings. Tad's are based on where they will finish. So yeah, that is where you can find all that. You got me at UpTheSide23, TadSide94. That's the show handle at The Aside Guys, and of course on Instagram at The Aside Guys as well. So interact with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode as well as thoughts on our rankings. We can interact with us on Instagram or Twitter, or you can even drop some YouTube comments as well. We'd love to hear all your interactions with the episodes as well. So make sure you subscribe or listen to your podcast, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, so you're always up to date with our YouTube videos as well. So yeah, love to hear from you, especially as the fantasy season is coming up here. We got the drafts coming along here and the season will be going along. That is the best way you can stay up to date with us. And we can give you personalized advice with all your respective fantasy leagues to help you take home some fantasy championships. Guys, without LAFB Network, there would be no us. So make sure you're supporting them at LAFB Network. They got a lot of great content, covering a lot of great content producers. You got the guys covering, the Rams and the Chargers with all the preseason takes and, what's going to happen with the roster when they have to cut it down to the mid-50s there. So who's going to be danger of being cut, who's going to make the roster. And of course, we already talked about at the beginning of the episode, but college football is only 2 weeks away. So we got all the coverage with the Bruins and the Trojans as well, as those seasons start to ramp up pretty soon as well. So all 4 football teams when it comes to the LA area there. But it's not just football anymore, because they got you covered with the MLB season. There's talk about like this geographic realignment, Tad. I don't know if you've been seeing all those posts. So it's like, I don't know what's going to happen there with expansion teams and all this, right? So it's like, but that doesn't matter because we're coming to the home stretch of the MLB regular season and of course MLB postseason. So they got you covered with all your Dodgers and Angels coverage. And of course, with the start of the football season, just a month later, we'll have NBA action as well. So they got all your preseason. And then, of course, with the season started, coverage when it comes to Lakers and the Clippers as well. So they're covering all 3 of the big sports when it comes to the LA market there. They got you covered on all fronts there. But guys, to everybody started supporting our podcast by listening to the podcast, by watching our videos, by interacting with us on social media, dropping some comments, dropping some ratings. I mean, just any way and every way that you supported the podcast, we really can't thank you enough.
And speaking of supporting LAFB Network, be sure to check out the other great podcast we have going on. USC kicks off their season against.
Is this San Jose State?
No.
Oh, damn. It happened 2 years ago, so like maybe it's happening again. I think San Jose State opens against Central Michigan. So
go Chips. Sorry.
Wow. Get out of here.
An even more fearsome opponent, Missouri State.
Oh, fun.
I know, right? So if you want to get a ultimate preview on USC and expectations for the season, because God knows Lincoln Riley is feeling that heat under his seat, check out the Salute to Troy podcast hosted by Al Rowe. Going to be amazing throughout the season. And he drops, I believe, one episode a week, right?
When the season starts, he does a lot more coverage. So there's lots of preseason stuff. There's the post-game stuff. So it's like right after the game's over, they're dropping something live for you guys. So yeah, he drops a lot of stuff. So I think it's actually like 2 or 3.
Yeah, and he goes live on YouTube. You can check it out after the fact on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you find your podcast. And Amir, speaking of another great podcast, and this actually goes into a guy I almost picked as my sleeper until I saw the news this morning. I almost put Jimmy G as my sleeper.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I truly thought today we were going to get the news that Stafford was done for the season. I really thought that. And I saw around 11 a.m. be like, he's out there. He's actually throwing the ball. I was like, oh shit, okay. So if you want all the latest reactions to the Stafford news that supposedly he's good to go, we'll see. I'm still a little conspiracy theorist about it. Check out LA Podfidential, hosted by Chauncey Talese, very good friend of the show. I really cannot wait to hear his opinions on all of that. Again, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find our show, you can find his show. So if you're a Rams fan, be sure to check that out. And as always, everyone, it's good to be back. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, and stay safe, everyone.